It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan.
I have real confidence that our football operations can once again create a dominant football team.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It dropped this morning. The brand new one is out. I think the guys are going to be doing a live Ask ITB tonight as well with Jeff Mosher and this man, the third member of the NWO. He is Adam Caplan, and he joins us here on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Well, in the pantheon of Philadelphia losses, the Eagles have given us a lot, but that Sixer one almost has to be ahead of what? The Tampa loss, the Carolina loss, any other one we can think of?
In my lifetime, I don't know of a greater loss in terms of of one of the Philadelphia sports team having an insurmountable lead. It would probably be like having a 3-touchdown lead head into the fourth quarter for an NFL team. There's simply no way you could lose that, right? You could. I mean, when they're up 26 with 7 and change in the third quarter, I'm thinking there's no way. And then, okay, so the lead gets down to 8 with 3.5 minutes left. I'm like, well, there's just no way they're going to lose this lead. And then once they did, you could see they were dejected. It was over because they couldn't get out of it. It sunk in at how they've choked.
Yeah.
And it just it's very disheartening. Now, I know everyone's writing them off for tomorrow night. Look, they've already won in Atlanta. We're gonna learn a lot. Now, what I didn't realize is that I knew about Doc Rivers last year, his Clippers team choking a 3-1 lead, but he's had some issues with blowing leads in playoff series.
Oh yeah, this is I think he's done it 3 times now.
At least, so that's troubling. That's definitely disappointing, and that's on Doc. Doc's a part of this. No question.
They all play a role. I thought last night was a team role in that game. So, all right, let's look at Football at 4 here. You guys had a good Inside the Birds podcast today. A lot of juicy stuff in there to kind of look at. Let's go back to what happened earlier this week and kind of talk about what this means because Nick Mullens is here. You talked about that last week right here on Football at 4. You mentioned Sean Mannon and Nick Mullens. Mullens got signed. So now there's 3 guys in that room. What does this mean for the quarterback position? Is Mullens here as a camp guy? Is he in competition? That's the theme of the camp. So what do we know about what Mullens brings?
All right, Mike. So that's the question. So, yeah, we dropped the news last Thursday that the guy that they wanted was Mullens of the two, of he and Sean Mannion. They preferred Mullens just because of the accuracy. Now, I know he's turned the ball over a little bit too much, but completion rate, pretty good. He doesn't have a very strong arm. He's a decent athlete, not a great athlete. He can get out of his own way. I like the fact that I know the Eagles did that Kyle Shanahan developed him as an undrafted free agent. So, look, he was a restricted free agent. The Niners didn't tender him, which means they didn't want him back. And he could have waited till training camp. He didn't. The Eagles could have waited till training camp. They didn't. They wanted to get that third quarterback for training camp for a guy that they liked. And they targeted this guy, and they got him. Now, he's part of this group. Remember, they signed 3 players now. Mullens is the last one. Richard Rodgers is back technically for a 4th time if you look at the contracts. He's back, and Michael Walker, who was a long shot to make the team, but Dave Caldwell, the GM of the former GM of the Jaguars, who Mosher pointed out was a good point, had him last year in Jacksonville, so he knows the player. Maybe he suggested him. Who knows? Caldwell's a personnel executive, more of a consultant for the Eagles. But I don't think, Mike, they would keep him for the fall. Now, he'll be in training camp, and he's sort of like a camp arm because you can't go to training camp with two players. And by the way, we're going to have preseason this year. The Eagles will have 3 preseason games, so you have to have a third quarterback, and that's what he's there for. Now, the question is, because we believe we're going to be operating on last year's rules, if they do waive him, because he's still not vested, he'd have to be waived first. Do we think that maybe they would bring him to the practice squad? Because remember now, you could have restrictions on how many years you have to have vested to be on a practice squad because we're still under last year's rules. So one way or the other, I think they might want to bring him back in the fall, but we have to get there first.
Yeah, I know that he's a guy who has starting experience. We talked about that. You also mentioned last week West Coast. That was a big reason why they liked him. And obviously, I liked it and I talked about this with Jeff on Monday, which was it helps the back end of the receivers, too, that they're not getting passes thrown from some jamoke that comes in, air mount them. They're getting passes from a guy who has started. That should help the back-end development to John Hightower and Quez Watkins and that group of guys.
That's a great point because, Mike, I've noticed this in OTAs, over the years. When the veterans aren't in, it's just generally rookies and first and second-year players. And the quarterbacks that are there, if the veterans are not there, are generally, other than the first-round pick, are pretty bad. And that speaks to your point. Sometimes it's hard to evaluate these receivers if the balls are at their ankle or they're just sailing wide. So, yeah, Mullens is a guy who's got accuracy. Just, for the record, does not have a very strong arm. He's more of a timing and rhythm West Coast offense. And Jeff and I have talked about this on Inside the Bird for, at least 3 months now. The type of offense that we've heard they're going to run, the type of throws are more West Coast based, timing and get out of your hands quickly, and let the receivers and tight ends run after the catch.
So that's something. Will Mullens be a part of this 53-man roster? I guess that's part of this whole competition that we will find out on July 27th when Eagles training camp begins. All right. The biggest, I guess, issue going forward. I did radio in Dallas today, and that's what they asked. What's the biggest problem for the Eagles? They said, well, can either one of you guys play corner? Because right now the competition at that spot, I don't even know if it's exciting or not because you got Darius Slay, and then that's it. But that will provide probably the biggest story into camp other than the tackle spot on the offensive side of the ball.
There are so many backup jobs open. Jeff and I were talking about this morning. We kind of joke. We're doing a training camp preview show for both sides of the football. We said that might be a 3-hour show because there's so many jobs open. But yeah, look, at outside corner, he's starting. The other side, it's right now. If they're going to add at least one veteran, as we said on the show this morning, they really need to add two, but they're going to add one at some point. Whether it's July 27th, that's not the first day that they start training camp. That's the day they have to report. They probably won't practice for a couple of days after that, but. McPherson right now is the fourth rounder compete for that job. Craig James should. Jaquette, I believe that's the way he pronounced his last name. Josiah Scott, they're bringing in. We're told that they're going to start him on the outside first because they know he could play slot. Those are really the guys who could be competing for it. The slot guys are Avonte Maddox, who also could play on the outside. Craig James, who could also play on the outside. And Josiah Scott, who could play on the outside. So here's what we do know. They do not need any more slot corners. They got too many of them. They need, Mike, anyone to compete on the outside. Look, if they could just, we mentioned 4 players on this show this morning, some guys that we think that potentially could come available by maybe the end of training camp or the preseason, where there's so much depth on some of these teams at corner where these guys might become available. So check that out on our show. But look, and you're right. Look, it's not great. It's not great talent they have there. McPherson, I know the Eagles are very high on. They thought he did a nice job in the limited work that he got. Because remember, there were no 7-on-7 and no 11-on-11. So you really can't tell 1-on-1s all that much until they're really having competition in training camp. So I wouldn't go crazy with anything that happens in the offseason, particularly with this team, because they're not really doing a whole lot. But it's by far the worst position on the team. It's not close. If you think receiver is not good, at least they have a ton of upside.
Yeah.
Other than Slay, what do you really have?
You've got guys drafted in the first round. You've got a second-round pick who's been a bust so far, but you've got at least guys who have shown flashes. Let me ask you this. Is there a guy, other than McPherson, who they drafted, that they are higher on that maybe we don't know about, or that like they say secretly, you know what, this guy's better than people are giving? Like, of that group, is there someone in there that they are hoping wins that job?
Well, I can only go back. There isn't one right now, but I could tell you that last summer, no one was talking about Craig James. So we found out, I don't know, 2 weeks before the team, because we were trying to do our 53. Not only were we hearing he was going to make the team, he was one of their top 4 corners, and Pat probably had, other than Slay, the best training camp of any corner. And I was kind of surprised by that. It wasn't just special teams. He actually had a very good training camp. And once you know it, he made the team. And right now, what's going to happen is someone's going to surprise. Now, Braylon Arnold could play probably safety too, but he's a long shot to make it. Lavert Hill, Shaquille Taylor, and Nate Meters are there only because of the experience that they had in the scheme that they're going to run, and they know the defense coordinator Gannon. Now, safety, Mike. Safety is one which is going to be fun because that, I think, has a little bit more definition of what we think we're going to get.
Yeah, you got Rodney McLeod, who obviously has the knee injury. You got Anthony Harris, who you signed, who's a veteran player who has had a really good year, and then he kind of had a year that was just okay. Kevon Wallace, drafted him last year, didn't get a really chance to see him. Seemingly, and you probably would know more about this, they like Marcus Epps, and then you've got Andrew Adams, who was a special teamer who played in Tampa, and obviously Elijah Riley is a young player as well. So the safety position, as you said, if McLeod and Harris are together and stay healthy, it seems that they're okay there.
Yeah, so we don't expect McLeod to be practicing in training camp at all, really. Maybe by the end of August, he's on the field doing some sort of drills. So we expect him to start training camp on active PUP because he's coming back from ACL reconstruction. Because the way it works is, Mike, once training camp starts, you cannot put him on PUP. You can't put him on and take him off until the start of the regular season. But if you don't put him on PUP to start training camp, he can't go on there for the regular season. So we're fully expecting him to start it there, but he can come off at any time. Yeah, Harris is starting, obviously. Kevon Wallace and Epps are competing for that third safety job. They probably will say Adams is too. Technically, he probably is, but he's more of a force safety and a special teamer. So that's kind of, we have a little bit clearer picture of safety in a corner. We don't have a clear picture. That thing is wide open right now.
Yeah, it sure is. And obviously, the safety spot you mentioned, you don't know about McLeod being ready. Now, do they think he'll be ready for the start of the season?
They're optimistic, but they don't know yet. They're not going to know until a while because he's still rehabbing it. That's the problem because of the time when he got his surgery. It puts him right up to hugging up to the start of the season. And look, it's same thing for the kid, the lineman that they signed formerly of the Colts, who tore his Achilles. They're optimistic they'll be ready very early in the season, but they don't know that because that Achilles injuries are tough to come back from. So look, they got a couple guys that they got to see what's going to happen, but they got some other guys coming back from surgeries. Zach Ertz, obviously, from his ankle surgery. We'll see if he's on the football team. He still is right now. Fulgham, we first reported that he had ankle surgery. He's good to go. We know about Lane Johnson. He's doing great. He'll be ready for training camp. He did quite a bit in this offseason. So it's bad to say this with the surgeries. From what we've been hearing, more often than not, they're all going to be ready, or not all, but mostly are going to be ready for the season.
Hey, what if Darius Slay ended up getting hurt? How much of an issue would that be?
Oh boy. This is why we suggest that they can't just go in adding one corner. They got to add two. Because depth, Mike, has nothing to do with how many players you have on the roster at a position. I jokingly said they could have 50 players at corner. They don't have a starting corner opposite Slay. You need to have guys. The way coaches will explain to me is this: you need to have players that you feel confident could go in the game and play and hold themselves up. So you only need like 5 corners on defense. You don't need 7. You don't need 6 to start a season, but you got to feel good about all of them. And right now they don't have a number 2 corner. They don't even have a number 3 right now because they don't know about McPherson yet because he hasn't had a real practice yet. Craig James is probably better as a backup slot and a 4th corner. Jaquette is a total developmental project who would be better on a practice squad. The other guys are just kind of roster filler, and we'll see. So again, it's a total mystery at this cornerback position. It's not what you really want, Mike, at one of the top positions on a football team.
What about trade possibilities? It seems like there are still some of that buzz out there. Is there anything that Howie Roseman can do down that road?
Not that we've been hearing. Like the kid that they got from the Jaguars. What happened is the Jaguars, as I understand it, from a size standpoint, Josiah Scott was not what they wanted at 5'9", just over 5'9" a quarter. Didn't have the length that they wanted at corner. And the Eagles, as Mosher said, he reported this like 3 months ago. He had heard that the Gannon and the coaches didn't really have a size requirement. So Scott is a guy the Eagles had a draftable grade on, we're told, last year, and we'll see what he can do. I mean, he's a pretty high character kid. They've had a good relationship with the agent over the years, as I understand it. One thing that the Eagles do a really good job of, if you notice, Mike, they rarely have guys who don't have high character in terms of off the field stuff. It's one thing we rarely talk about, but you don't see a lot of Are there players over the police blotter? You just don't. They generally, not always, but generally have pretty high character guys.
All right, Adam Caplan, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. And then let's go back to safety real quick, because if McLeod's not ready, is Wallace a guy that they view as a starter? Do they look at him as a future starter or a guy that would start opposite Harris, or do they need to go out and maybe sign someone else there?
Yeah, so Mike, last year, Wallace did next to nothing. There were a lot of fans of our show were saying, oh, man, he's going to play lots this year. We kept saying he's not ready. And that showed by the amount of snaps he got. I mean, you mentioned Marcus Epps earlier. Wallace, we're told, actually had a good spring. Now, again, they didn't do any team drills. So we can't definitely say that he's on schedule, because we won't know until they actually have real practices in training camp. But I know that they're happy with his progress so far this offseason. And you mentioned Epps, who's a guy that knows the defense. So that really helps him over Wallace. But Wallace was drafted in the 4th round. He's probably a better football player. But Epps has got a little bit more experience. And the good thing with Epps is here now, this is technically his 3rd season with the football team.
Yeah, I know that will be something interesting there, as because Wallace was a draft pick, and sometimes you're hoping for that jump in year number 2. I do want to real quick. Yesterday with Jeff on the Q&A show, they were talking about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, saying that he might be best served in the slot. Do the Eagles believe that as well?
They've tried it, Mike. You don't have to be fast to play in the slot. You have to be able to get open within a short area. Vaughn knows that better than anyone. He was the Sultan on the slot. I know that, I know talking to the Bears over the years, they think Allen Robinson is incredible in the slot. He does not have long speed, but he has this ability to get open in a short area. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, if he's going to make it, and to me, he's more of a long shot to make the football team, just based on the reality of how disappointing he's been in the first 2 seasons. But Nick Sirianni is a guy that said he was on record months ago talking about Arcega-Whiteside. He liked the player. We'll see. It gives him the fact that he's done it a little bit does help him show that he could play different positions, but he hasn't shown, Mike, that he could play any position well yet. And that's the problem with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
A lot of competition. You mentioned it, the fact that there's not a standout, but at least they have, 2 first-round picks. Arcega-Whiteside at least adds some intrigue by working with a new staff. That's the only reason why I guess we're giving him another shot. Is because of the new staff.
And, again, with Nick Sirianni, who's a receiver guy, played receiver in college.
Yeah.
Patullo, his right-hand man, is a guy that's played receivers, knows the position. Aaron Moorhead. I mean, between the 3 of them, I've said this before. I threw this line out 4 months ago, and I keep using it because it makes me laugh. If these guys can't get these guys up to speed at receiver, forget it. And the front office completely missed.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree with that. I think, and again, that's the only reason I think I'm willing to give Arcega-Whiteside another shot is, okay, maybe the previous coaching staff didn't develop him, didn't get the best out of him. You mentioned before that was one of the weaknesses of Peterson, of not getting the most out of the younger players. All right, I'll buy that. Let me see what a coaching staff that focuses on that position can get out of him. If nothing, then he's done.
I agree. And, again, it's a situation right now with this coaching staff. I strongly believe player development will be more important. Not that the other staff ignored it, but let's be honest, Mike, there was a real lack of player development with his former staff, particularly the last couple of years. I would say 19 and 20. I can't put my finger on it, but there was a lack of player development. Now, we could blame the front office all we want about, hey, they might have missed this player or that player, but as you said, and I think it's a fair point, let's see what this staff can do with these players.
All right, Adam Caplan at Caplan NFL. You guys are going live tonight. What time?
Yeah, 9 o'clock, and then 9 to 9:45. Get your questions in on our Facebook board, Inside the Birds. We have a group there. And also, tonight from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm doing my Twitch chat. I'll probably go to 8:50, 8:45. But tons of Eagle fans in there. It's actually pretty cool. Bear fans, Buck fans. We're building something kind of cool there.
Adam Caplan will be back next week for another edition of Football at 4, and he, like all guests, right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Adam, take care, bud.
Guys, thank you.